everyone, this is Joy for Honeybee Stamps. For today's video, I have made a Tri-fold Slimline card using the Lovely Layers Heart Vine die and the Quilted Heart stencil from the new Valentine's release. Now I'm starting with a piece of white cardstock trimmed down to 4 by 3 3/4 inches. And this is going to be the front flap for our tri-fold card. The second flap is going to be 6.5 by 3 3/4 inches. Now I'm using the Quilted Heart stencil, and in this stencil it's actually a 2-pack, and you will also get the Quilted Dot stencil as well. But I opted to use the hearts for this one, and I'm using some VersaMark ink, which is clear embossing ink, coming in with a small blender brush, and I'm just blending the ink into each one of these little hearts because I'm going to be doing some white heat embossing on the front of this. I wanted to keep the color scheme of this card red and white, and so I also wanted some texture on the front of my card, so I opted to do that with embossing powder. So when I'm finished blending all of these out, I'm just going to come in with the white embossing powder and sprinkle that on. Then I'm going to use my heat tool and just heat that until it's nice and melted. You will know it's melted because it's shiny and not dull. So just sprinkling a little bit of that on. And if I have any to clean off, I'll just use a small paintbrush if I have any little stray pieces of embossing powder. Now I'm just taking my heat tool to that, heating it up until it's melted, and this is going to give this card panel a really great texture without adding color. I didn't want just a plain front card. I wanted it to have some interest to it, so that's why I'm doing some white heat embossing. Now here is the second piece I'm taping down to my work surface. Again, this is cut 6.5 by 3 3/4 inches, prepping that with an anti-static powder tool, and I'm just going to line up that same Quilted Heart stencil, taping it down. And once I've inked up all of these hearts, I'm going to have to move it down because that card panel is bigger than the stencil. But when I do that, I'm just going to line it up with the hearts above it, and then you just have this perfect little order. So once I finish up that line, I will move the stencil, again lining that up with the hearts above it, and then just finishing stenciling off that, I think there's just 2 more rows, and just inking that up again with the VersaMark clear embossing ink. And then I will come in with the white embossing powder one more time, sprinkling that on, and then just using my heat tool to heat that until it is melted. And isn't that just so pretty with that white on white look? I love how the front of this turned out. Now that that's done, I'm going to die cut using the Lovely Layers Heart Vine die, and I'm going to die cut 2 of each of these dies. One is like the solid heart and one is the open heart, and I'm going to layer the open heart on top of the solid heart. You could do this with 2 different colors and that would be beautiful as well. I just really wanted to keep it strictly red and white, and I really wanted the red to be quite bold, so that's why I did the solid and the open hearts both in red cardstock. So I'm just going to clean out all the little spots in that and just glue this together. I'm going to come in with some liquid glue and adhere that together, and I will do that for both pieces. One is going to go on the front smaller flap of the card, and the other one is going to go on the second larger flap of the card, and it's going to go above each card, so it kind of hangs over the top, and I think that that looks really pretty. This would also be pretty even if you just did just the open hearts. That would be really pretty too. So I'm just going to glue that together, making sure everything lines up, just pushing everything into place. I think that's what's fabulous about liquid glue, because it gives you a second to work with your paper. And again, I'm going to do that for the second piece. Now I'm coming in with those stenciled pieces, and I'm going to score on the smaller one on the left side 1/4 inch in, on the larger one on the right side 1/4 inch in. And this is going to be our flaps that we will stick adhesive to wrap around the Slimline card, which measures 8.5 by 3.5 inches. Now you could make those flaps a little bit bigger if you wanted to, and I also probably would have made my card panels a little bit bigger and then just trimmed off the excess if it hung over the side. because when I put the large one on, it was a little bit short, so I had to adjust that. I'm coming in with some Scor-Tape because it is very strong and it will definitely hold up to opening and closing this card. I'm lining up that bottom flap with the bottom of the card. The same thing with this bigger flap, lining that up and then just folding that together. Now I'm coming in with some liquid glue just on the bottom part of these hearts, because again, this is going to stick up above the flap, so obviously you don't want any glue behind that. And I'm just going to adhere the bottom one and the top one, and you can see that I've flipped them just a little bit so the hearts are not going in the same direction. And I just think the red on white is absolutely stunning. Now I'm going to come in with the Tailgate alphabet die and spell out the word hug using the same red cardstock. And I'm also going to be using sentiments from the Smooch stamp. And so the whole sentiment is going to say, sending you a paper hug. And we're going to put the word hug inside of this card because I really, again, wanted to keep the front quite simple. I'm using a T ruler to line up my sentiment. Now, when you're putting your sentiment in here, if you don't want it to be seen, make sure it is going to be hidden behind one of those flaps. This sentiment will be hidden behind the larger flap. So I'm just using some liquid glue, starting with that center letter. It just works better to work from the center out to make sure things get spaced properly. Lining that up with my T ruler to make sure that it's straight. I'm usually an eyeballer, but not with this because it would be very crooked. So I'm just going to adhere that down, and then we're going to stamp the sentiments. So in my MISTI, I have a piece of white cardstock, and I have the sentiment that says sending you a, and then the other sentiment, a paper hug. Obviously, I don't need both of the A's, so I'm going to mask off the A that says sending you a with a little bit of purple tape. I'm going to ink that up with some black ink, then taking off that purple tape, stamping it down, and then I will have both of my sentiments. I will just use my paper trimmer to trim these out to a really, small size. And a paper is going to be inside of the card, so it'll say a paper hug, and then on the outside it will say sending you. So I'm going to adhere this inside one directly to the cardstock right above the word hug, and the sentiment on the front will be right below the red hearts with some foam tape. I did want this to have a little bit of dimension. I just love sentiments with dimension. For me, I think it's very rare I glue it directly to the cardstock. Now, once that's adhered down, this card is done. You could also finish it off with some sequins, some little jewel drops, just anything like that, but I really wanted to keep it super simple and all about that Lovely Layers heart vine die. And isn't that just so, so pretty? And the red is just so striking against the white, and then you've got that great little sentiment. Thank you guys so very much for stopping by and watching. I hope that you enjoyed this project, and I'll see you later. Bye.